So I guess the first question I'll ask is, what does self-made mean to you?
Man, it's an excellent question. For me, self-made is it's crazy because that's exactly how I see myself. Is that I am self-made. I remember, and the story that kind of lets me know that is when I was growing up in high school, I always played football and I always played basketball. And and when I went to high school my freshman year, the assistant our assistant football coach was also the assistant wrestling coach. I had no idea what wrestling was except WWE, what I saw on
Sure.
television. And so one day they were just like, "Why don't you come in and try wrestling?" Because I was about 103 pounds, 5 foot 2 inches tall, and I'm like, "Nah, coach, I don't want to get hit with chairs. Nah, I want to do that." And he was like, "Nah, why don't you come on in and try it?" And he laughed at me. I was like, "Nah." So I played football. I kept playing football, and I wasn't that great in middle school. I was pretty good in football because I had the speed and I could get around guys. But in high school, I was. This is Texas football. Everybody
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
humongous. I'm 5 foot 2, 103 pounds, soaking wet, and I wasn't able to get away with a lot of things anymore. And so we'd play the football game, and we would lose the football game, and in the locker room you would hear all this. You would hear the quarterback, man, if the wide receiver had caught the ball, we'd have won. And then you would hear the wide receiver, if the running back hadn't
Yeah.
fumbled the ball, we'd have
Yeah.
won. And then you would hear, the quarterback or the running back, man, if my line would
Yeah.
block for me, we would have scored, we would have won. And it was just everybody put the blame on everybody else. Everybody was doing that. So by the time I decided to go try wrestling, it was just me. So when I lost, I couldn't understand that there was a disconnect, and the culture usually was to blame somebody else for losing. When I lost, it was just me. Oh well, I didn't do this well enough. I didn't train hard enough. Or I didn't know this enough. That's why I lost. From that moment, it clicked in my head. I flipped the switch to where it was, if I didn't put in the work,
It's your fault.
I wasn't, it's
It's
my
your
fault.
fault.
I wasn't
Yeah.
successful. And so I've been out of the house since 17 when my parents sent me off to college. And I just been on this journey by myself of chasing perfection in each and every avenue that I was in. And it's all led me from one school to the next college, which my career took off, to training at the Olympic Training Center for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden making the transition to mixed martial arts. And 8 years later, I'm sitting here as the world
So
champion.
before all that, what did you want to do when you were young? What did you want to be?
I always said when I was younger, I always said I wanted to be an engineer.
Any any
And
reason?
yes, when I would like to say probably about 10, somewhere around there. Our TV, and we had the big TVs back in the day, the big
Yeah.
box ones, and just all of a sudden it went out. I don't know how or what happened, but it went out. Well, you would turn it back on, and you could still hear the sound. You heard that it was on a channel, but it was just out. We couldn't see any picture, nothing. So no one could figure out what had happened to the TV. And so one day I got home early. I walked home from school. I got home and I just went in the garage, got my dad's pliers and things like that. And I just took the screws out, took the back off the TV. I had no idea what I was doing. Took the back out, and I saw that there was a bulb in there. I took the bulb out. I just saw, I'm like, oh man, I've seen these at Walgreens. And we had a Walgreens literally down the street. Walked there, got a bulb, came back, replaced it, put everything back together, turned the TV on. It was working.
You like that idea of taking everything
And
apart, putting it back together.
yes, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm gonna be an engineer. And that's when I started like trying to find out what type of engineer. And I realized there's a petroleum engineer, there's
Yeah.
an engineer that does this and that. I'm like, I want to be a civil
Yeah.
engineer. So I said that all when I was a kid until, obviously I got into school, got into sports, and things kind of changed for me.
When was it that mixed martial arts, UFC, when did that click in for you? Did someone put a bug in your ear?
Yeah, that didn't I was first introduced to this sport in college. I was first in college. So while I was wrestling at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, my teammate had a twin brother, and one of my teammates, and he would fight over the summers. It was the craziest thing I ever seen. And he would go fight, and I'm like, why are you fighting? Why do you do this? And then I saw that the sport was growing and growing. And of course, NCAA rules, he couldn't get paid for those fights. So he was essentially fighting for free, professional fights. And his twin brother was also a fighter. And we were in college when I saw his twin brother get signed to the UFC. And I'm like, oh man, that's incredible. But deep down inside, I was still kind of afraid of being punched in the face, because as a wrestler, yes, we're very close. It's a different type of combat, but I don't get punched in the knee, an elbow, or kicked to the head. So I'm like, I'll wait on that. But then it was when I was training at the Olympic Training Center a few years later. It was the first time I met Sugar Rashad Evans, who was he was number one, former light heavyweight champion at the time, one of the biggest, if not the biggest star in the game at that point. And the first and only time I've been starstruck. And I've met a lot of celebrities. And he walked in, I was starstruck. Oh, that's Rashad Evans. Oh, shit, that's him. And from that moment on, we trained that day together. And I just couldn't believe how down to earth he is, because everyone they see these perceptions of us fighters. They see us how fierce and how just savage we are inside that cage, but they think that perception is the reality.
Yeah.
But then when you get around this man and you realize, oh my God, he's a normal person. Not just is he a normal person, he's a nice guy. He would give me the shirt off his back. And I just couldn't believe that. And then from that moment, he kind of started, it was like big brother, little brother type of situation. Boom, right away we clicked. And then, of course, big brother's always going to poke fun at the little brother and make fun of me. You know, you want to come do this. Why don't you switch over and do MMA, do this sport?
How old were you then?
And I was about, I want to say 25.
Is that, in this sport today, is that considered late to start? It has, I mean, it's getting later, right? In the sense, because the sport's getting so big.
Yes, but in a sense, first and foremost, it's a learning curve. Everybody learns differently and at different speeds. But I came in with the best platform that you could ever have, which was wrestling. You know, I was highly trained in the art of just learning how to manipulate someone else's body. So I can control. If you think of a fight, think of every street fight that you've ever watched. There's 3 positions that you could end up in a street fight. There's both guys standing up, swinging at each other. One guy on top of the other, beating the other one up. Or the other guy on top, beating the other one up. So 2/3 of a fight takes place on the ground. And I was already a master at controlling where that fight takes place.
That was one of my questions as an outsider, is if you were to start all over, would you still want wrestling to be your foundation?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What would be number 2? What would be number 2?
Number 2, I would say nowadays jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because wrestling, I have the ability to control where the fight takes place.
Yeah.
Now with jiu-jitsu, I have the ability to end that right away. End the fight, diffuse the situation right away. Because now I know how to submit you. I know how to choke you. I know how to put you in holds to where you just can't move. You have to give up. And so those 2 would be the best that I would say as far as manipulating any situation. You get into a street fight, this guy's a big 250-pound man and you're 140, 150 pounds. Boom, you take him down. You know you have the ability to do that. You take him down, put in a choke, you've disabled him completely.
Amazing. So I wanted to ask, in my business, why I think I'm good at what I do is I make mistakes and I learn from what I'm doing. I learn all the time. I try a bunch of different stuff. So
yes.
Do you have the ability to do that?
It's tough because, yeah, you can, but that's what practice is for. That's what training is for, because You can't. We get one. That's the craziest thing about what we do. We get one shot.
Yeah.
That one night, we get that one night to put on the performance for the fans and for the millions watching around the world. And if you make a mistake that night, it not only could it cost you a lot of money, but it could also cost you your life, your health. And so it is a dangerous game that we do, extremely dangerous. But at the same time, it's having the courage to step in there and test yourself.
I thought it was interesting. I think you were speaking to Rogan, and you were saying, I think it was the fight you lost, about I needed money, I need to get paid. So part of me was thinking, Jesus, maybe you're actually probably getting in the ring before you want to be getting in the ring because you need to pay
Absolutely.
for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's that fight was, and I remember it was I had fought my first professional fight, and it was about 7 or 8 months after that had gone by. Because I thought my whole train of thought was, you get a fight, you get a fight, you're just rolling. So money keeps coming in as you're fighting, and these are small fights. You're making $2,000 a fight, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm fighting every other month. I'm gonna be fighting. No, not the case. Now 7 months had gone by, I hadn't fought anyone, and I'm starving.
Yeah,
2 grand, 2 grand before you pay your managers and your coaches and all of that, which is not much at all, turns into maybe almost 1 grand
sure.
really fast. And so after 8 months, I just need to fight anybody. Sign me up. It doesn't matter who, sign me up, it doesn't matter where. And I didn't do my homework enough. And I wasn't skilled in every aspect of the game yet to be able to go out there with anybody. And so that was a dangerous time because it taught me a very, very important lesson, because if you're not prepared, it'll come back and bite you in the butt, which it goes to attest to one of the biggest, if not my most important quote that I live by today, is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And taking that short notice fight, I took the fight, I believe, on 2 weeks notice. Taking a short notice fight like that, not knowing much about the opponent, I failed to plan accordingly, and it was just a recipe for disaster.
But I'm assuming that, again, that's where that loss helps you gain the next level. In some ways,
Absolutely.
it's hard to say now. I remember asking Deontay, the guy's undefeated. This was before the draw with Tyson. But carrying that undefeated around you, that's a tough thing. Not only do you have to defend it, but it's the zero you're defending.
Absolutely. But a lot of people let it become them, because the world now identifies you as that.
Yeah.
They say, oh man, it's an undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. Undefeated.
Yeah.
They start putting that in front of you. It's not, oh, Deontay Wilder, the boxer, heavyweight champion of the world. It's undefeated
Correct.
heavyweight
Correct.
champion of the world. So they already put that pressure on you. And after a while, certain guys that aren't mentally trained to be able to deal with it, I mean, they say they can deal with it in a certain way. But if you don't understand what's going on, then you don't understand that they're putting this added pressure on you. Instead of you to go out there, then you fall into the cycle to where now you're going out to try to defend this undefeated title, as opposed to just going out there and doing your thing and being one of the best boxers in the
Do you
world.
remember the first time you got hit? The first time you got clocked?
In a fight, see, there's a difference between
Yeah.
practice than actually being in an actual
Well,
fight. So
keep them separate. You said you'd never punched, you never got into it. Do you remember the first time, even in a practice, you just got clocked? Like, shit, can I do this?
yeah, well, I remember the first time I really got hit when I was a kid in middle school. I got beat up by this kid named Jacob, who I thought I could fight off, but no, he caught me with a nice 2-piece real quick. Fight got broke up, but I walked home knowing I just ate a smooth 2-piece. But then fast forward to years later, when I decided to eventually get into the sport, practicing, it's different, because when you're practicing, you know that these are my practice partners, these are my teammates and training partners, essentially. So they're not trying to kill me, even though they give you that feel that you're gonna need. But it wasn't until I stepped into the cage for the first time, and I went straight professional. I didn't have any amateur fights. So the first time I was hit it was a shock. It was like, wow. And not only the first time I was hit, the first time I actually hit
Yeah.
someone with the intention of hurting them was like, oh wow, that felt different. That didn't feel anything like practice. That felt different. But then, once that they're still coming, then you start to kind of get into this cycle to where, hey, it's kill or be killed. I have to take care of business, or this guy's coming to get me.
When you won the title and that's the goal, what was the feeling? You were emotional, you're crying. What's that feeling like? Because that's the goal, right? That was your goal.
Yeah, it was a goal, but it's a weird situation, and I've always kind of been in this situation ever since I made a mental switch and started living by the set of rules that I was living by, and I kind of had this first feeling in college because I was wrestling and I was like, oh man, I need to be in high school. I was like, oh, I want to be a state champion. And so I started putting in the effort. I started a little bit late, but I started putting in effort to try to be that. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to achieve it. I ended up placing third. So then it just burned a hole in me like, okay, what's next? You need to go to college and you need to be a national champion. And then I get to college and of course along the way you get people that, you can't do it. You started late. You're not gonna be able to do it. You're not that good. So it was just fuel to the fire for me, internally fuel to the fire to where in college now I set out to become a national champion. And I worked and I worked and worked and worked tirelessly to try to achieve that. And then I remember the night where it finally happened, finally achieved it. This was the year before I was in the finals and ended up getting second, lost to a guy that I beat 3 times already. That was heartbreaking. I'm like, maybe it's not meant to be, but then the fire just burned harder and harder. I'm like, okay, I'm going to achieve this. The following year, I finally achieve it. Remember, I'm sitting in the hotel, me and me and my girlfriend at the time, my college sweetheart. We were sitting at the hotel bar, and I just remember this feeling that I got. I was drinking a rum and coke. I don't know what it was, but I was drinking rum and coke. But I'm sitting there, and
Oh,
then
of course.
yeah, I think it was. I think it was. So I'm sitting there, and I get this feeling, and I'm like, what's next? And it was literally maybe a couple hours after I won the tournament. I'm like, what's next? All right, Olympic gold medal. Let's go chase that. And then I start chasing that, and then unfortunately I didn't achieve it. But then I pivoted into MMA, and this was always the goal. And then I remember the night I win the bell, and literally maybe an hour after that, I'm in the back locker room showering, and while I'm showering by myself, I'm thinking, what's
Yeah.
next?
So what is it? What's next?
What's
What
next?
is next?
What's next is this next fight. Go out there and defend the title.
So you already defended once. How do you stay motivated?
Yeah.
Like, is there more pressure now to? Is it even more pressure now?
Yeah, because you're at the top of the
Yeah.
mountain. So every time now, people are looking for you to be dethroned, for you to be beat. That's all it is. It's very rare for people to, like, oh man, I want to see him win the title because I already have the title. So people, oh, I want to see how he does. I want to see how he does with this new guy, this new opponent. And so everyone, in a sense, everyone's kind of rooting to, watching to see you lose. But for me, it's just the will to compete. It's not necessarily I'm going out. I don't think of it as I'm going out there to defend. It's I'm going out there to compete against this other man to prove that I'm the best man, that I'm better than him, that I am the best on the planet. That's all it is for me. It's that will of competition. It's still burning very, very deeply inside me. And the day that it starts to diminish might probably be the day that I walk away from the sport.
So what would that have to feel like?
I couldn't tell
Yeah.
you, and I hope I don't have to find out here in the next few years. But it would I think it would be something that you just know, because as a competitor, we know when we have that extra edge. We know when we have that extra, that feeling, that umph, to where we're willing to say, I'm ready to die in here. We know when we have
So
that. And
when with Connor saying he's retiring, is that it's got to be disappointing, doesn't it? Because if the
no,
whole goal, not for you, where don't you want to like if someone else is considered the best and you want I want to kill him. You know it's not a depressing thing. If George St.
yeah,
Pierre
but
was the best, don't you want to?
yeah, now see that's a good one. That's a better person to use. See, the issue is George St. Pierre left as the
Yeah.
best. So that's tough for a lot of people to deal with, because he left as the best. And a lot of people, the people that come after, want to be the guy to dethrone him, because it's hard to call yourself the best if you never dethroned who was the best at the time. And so a lot of people wanted to, oh man, I want to beat George St. Pierre. I want to fight George St. Pierre. So we never really got that shot at him. But with someone like Connor, and especially in this day and age that we are in the sport, is these guys we're prize fighters. We are prize fighters, but a lot of people, they forget the fact of why we got into this in the first place, which was competition, which is to be the best on the planet. So that kind of gets blurred when you're dealing with as much money as we're making now, as we're getting for fights. So it's it makes it difficult to still be about being the best when
So
there's a lot of money at stake.
so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it feels like, look, I could crush Connor. It's not worth it because I'm in it for the competition.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to, because the thing with Connor is Connor's got such a name to where there's a certain level that you
Yep.
get to where people, and I see this a lot with comedians. There's a certain level that you get to where you might not even be your joke might not even be
But
funny,
you get the
but
laugh.
you get the
Correct. You're
laugh
right.
because of who you
You're
are as a
right.
comedian. And Connor has gotten to that level to where he's not the best,
Yep.
but he gets that nod. Oh, it's Conor
Yep.
McGregor. He's a dangerous fighter, one of the best guys, but you're not the best. And so, of course, with that being said, of course, I would love to compete against him to really show how much of a deficit they are between myself and himself. But um, at the end of the day, and that's the thing too, is the business aspect of it is very important, because of course, we got to
You
get
gotta get
paid for what
paid.
we
You gotta
do.
get paid.
Yeah, we got to get paid for what we do. But yeah, I mean, I would love to compete against him, but I'm not
Would
chasing
you
that. If he wants to retire, he's
would,
gone.
would you ever do boxing? Straight up boxing?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What would make you do that?
The right amount,
Who would you want to
the
fight?
right amount of
Who
money.
would you want to fight?
Oh man, there's a ton of guys that I would want to fight. I think someone that I would love to fight. I always loved their father, and the way that he fought was Julio Cesar Chavez. I love the way that he fought, because he was a dog in there when he went in, and he was coming after you. It was your heart versus his heart. And I would love to fight his son Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And his son is a good boxer, very very skilled, very talented boxer, and I think that would be an incredible fight. And we'll see what happens.
All right.
It could happen.
So I know you got to go. You're training. You're in Florida, right? When
Yes,
do you
sir.
go?
I'm in Florida.
So real quick, when do you go to Dubai?
I have no idea. That's what I mean, it's a crazy time that we live in right now. And a lot of the places, the borders are still closed. So, these are logistic things that the company's got to figure out, and how they're going to get us over there to the island and back.
All right, so here, one word. I'm going to give you some names. Just give me one word that comes to mind. Good, bad, ugly.
Okay.
Gilbert Burns,
Hungry.
Masvidal,
Hype.
Leon Edwards,
Improved.
Stephen Thompson,
Karate Kid.
Damian Maya,
Strangler.
Michael, is it Chessa?
Michael Chiesa.
Chiesa.
Tough.
Rafael Dos Anjos.
Gritty.
Nate Diaz.
Bum.
Jeff Jeff Neal.
Savage.
Robbie Lawler.
Original Savage.
Conor McGregor.
Chicken.
I love it. I love it. Why? I have to ask you this from my own perspective. When I watch you, or when I watch boxing, it could even be a highlight. I get nervous for the person I'm rooting for. In no other sport do I get nervous when I want someone to win. Why is that?
You have to realize what we do is this is pure. This is innate. This is one of those. If you really think about it, these are one of those things that humans naturally do. Like basketball, humans don't naturally play basketball. Of course, you might pick it up and try to figure out what it is. Oh, how do I play this? You know, you're taught those. But but love, like reproducing kids, like these are things we naturally do. And fighting is one of those things we naturally do. You get aggressive towards another man, you have a disagreement, you just don't know how. You just get angry enough with testosterone, you start fighting. That's one thing we naturally do. So it's something that resonates with anybody, any place, any time, any culture, all across the world. And so it's one of those things that it doesn't matter where you're from, what you speak, what you understand. Everybody speaks the language of fight.
Before you get into the ring, what do you think? Where do you get the motivation? Where does for me, I want to kill the competition, and I think about them, and I think about what's going through your head.
It's I just it's a matter. It's a collective thought process of trust that I've got the adequate preparation. Trust in that, trust in my coaches, and also trust in my abilities. And so by the time before I cross in there, because there's two different, you have to be able to flip the switch on and flip it off. I can't walk around the world being the savage that I am inside the cage. And so that switch is off. I've prepared, I trust in my preparation. And then once I cross that barrier inside that cage, I turn into the Nigerian Nightmare. And at that point, that's when it's savage. I'm ready to die in there. And anyone's ever seen my fights, they'll see it moments before I walk in. I kind of take a moment right there before I cross that barrier. I pray for myself, for my safety, and as well as my opponent's safety. And then I cross that barrier, and they see the change.